There's a story I once read and it's been bugging in my head about this creepy little dance.
Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Goodrum Show with me, Chris Goodrum. Now, yes, okay, last episode I did say that was probably going to be the last episode of the year, but it isn't. Surprisingly, I seem to have managed to get a weekend off, so I thought, well, let's do a fitting end to the year, shall we say? So this is the Boxing Day leftovers episode of the show, I suppose, for want of a better word. But before we kind of crack on with the tasting, I've been obviously buying a fair amount of whiskey over the last few weeks, as you do at this time of year, and I can tell you for nothing that the price of whiskey is not going down. In actual fact, it's going in the opposite bloody direction, it has to be said. And I seem to be finding myself more often than not having to sort of tweak my margins. I mean, okay, this seems to be the unspoken part of whiskey. There's so many reviews and what have you that go on and on about sort of like how good or bad a particular whiskey is, but very rarely will they talk about A, value for money, and B, cost of things, because nobody really likes to talk about that. And by and large, most reviewers, bloggers and what have you are not actually retailers, where I am indeed. Did I hear a puddy cat? I did hear a puddy cat. It's nobody. So the thing is, if you're part of one of the big chains like you know who, they will basically want to put their 30 or 40% markup on the whiskey. Job done. That's what we're going to do. They don't really care about whether the whiskey itself is actually worth what it's going on the shelf at. I mean, for example, I was tasting a number of Cask Strength independently bottled whiskies, one of which was a 9-year-old Talisker. Very, very good 9-year-old Talisker, it has to be said. But when I crunched the numbers and figured out what it would have to go on the shelf at, it was going to go on there at £99.95, and I'm just thinking, what? That's ridiculous for a 9-year-old whiskey. Yes, it might be the dog's nads of 9-year-old whiskies, but even so, who in their right mind is going to spend nearly £100 on a 9-year-old whiskey when you can buy a 20-odd-year-old whiskey for the same sort of money? And that, in a nutshell, is basically it. Whiskey is getting a little bit too expensive, and I'm sitting there looking at thinking, well, certainly at the sub 10-year-old mark, and you're thinking, well, realistically I should be selling this for example, $39.95, but if I put my entire margin on it, I ain't going to get it in there, so I'm going to have to sort of like take a little bit of the hit to be able to sell that. And like I said, I'm not just a retailer, I'm also a punter as well, so I go on and on and on about value for money because, would I put my hard-earned cash on the table for that particular bottling if I think it's only worth, say, $39.95, yet to make my full margin, for argument's sake, I'd have to sell it at $45. That's just an assumption. Do I think it's worth 45, or is it actually really only worth 40? It's the big conundrum, and like I said, a lot of retailers don't even consider that. It's just a case of we want to make our margin and whack it on, and there you go. That's what it sits on the shelf at, But anyway, so today's tasting is kind of at both ends of the pricing points, I suppose, for want of a better word. Yes, I'm looking at Kilkerran and Springbank. At the one end of the spectrum, you've got, say, the Kilkerran 12-year-old, which at $39.95 is an absolute steal. And then we have the 9-year-old Local Barley, which is $92.95 for a 9-year-old. Well, that's a bit steep, but anyway. So, before we carry on, I'd just like to say yes, a big thank you to Grant at Springbank for continually supporting my desire for samples, and he knows full well that every time he sends out an email saying what the next batch of releases will be, he will get a reply saying, can I have a sample please? And 9 times out of 10 those samples duly arrive. And so So why Springbank? Well, why not? I mean, I'm kind of pandering to the masses, I suppose. Springbank episodes of the show get lots of views, and I like to have lots of views. And this also gives me the opportunity to hopefully do the first YouTube tasting of the not yet released Kilkerran Heavily Peated. So just keep watching for that, if nothing else at all. Yeah, like I said, big thank you to Springbank and to Grant for you know the samples, and well, let's take a look at today's lineup.
This little creepy girl, she has some trouble making friends. She can't seem
Right, okay, so we're going to kick off with Kilkerran, and we're going to kick off with the newly released Cask Strength 8-year-old. It is bottled at 56.5, so nothing like starting with a nice light one, is there? Then we're going to move on to the 9-year-old Local Barley. So this is bottled at 57.7, and I believe was aged in 80% American oak and 20% sherry. And like I said, it costs $92.95. Although I did see somebody saying that Loch Fyne had got it on at 125, and I mean, that really is stretching it, to say the least. But we shall see whether indeed the juice is worth $92.95. The next bottling we'll be looking at is the last of this year's 12-year-old Cask Strength, which was bottled in August of 2018. It was bottled at 56.2, and as far as I'm aware, it is the usual recipe of 70% sherry and 30% American oak. The fourth bottling we'll be looking at is the 2018 release of the Springbank 18-year-old, bottled at 46%, and with what seems to be breaking with tradition with older age statement Springbank bottlings. This has absolutely no sherry whatsoever. It's all 100% American oak, which I'm more than happy about, it has to be said. Although, like I said, as you well know, I don't dislike the sherry character of Springbanks. I love that sort of grittiness, shall we say. And then next bottling we'll be looking at is the Kilkerran Heavily Peated. Currently it is 2 years old and 10 or 11 months, and is roughly around about 61% ABV. Now, I don't think an ABV has been decided upon, and or an actual release date as yet, although I know it will be released when it gets to 3. Whether it will be on the dot or not, I honestly don't know. I have seen a picture on It's All About Springbank's Facebook page, which seems to show the current, well, the label, although interesting, it says 75 CL on it, so I'm guessing it's either for the American or the European market. Maybe they've already sorted that one out, but it also states an ABV, which is a bit odd, because I'm surprised that they've all figured out now what they're going to bottle it at. But anyway, so the picture, the image in the picture is just my kind of photoshopping, just to, you know, see what it might actually look like. So, but it may not look like that at all. But anyway. And the final bottling is the 14-year-old Longrow sherry finished, sherry matured, I should say, which was bottled at 57.8% and was released August time, I think it was. So yeah, that's today's lineup. I think it's going to be really quite interesting. So let's start off with a nice light Kilkerran then, shall we?
This little creepy girl.
Right, okay, so let's see what the 8-year-old gives us on the nose then, shall we? Slightly gristy, quite barleyed, a little bit gritty, a little bit dry peat kind of coming through. That sort of gritty American oak tannin. I mean, what is it with Springbank? It just seems to pull out the grittiness of the oak, and I really love it. It's got a lovely natural character. There's hints of apricot. There's a little bit of a florally barley kind of note. Lovely richness to it as well. Touch of malt. I mean, all round, that is an absolutely gorgeous whiskey. It has to be said. And yeah, you can feel a a little bit of an alcohol prickle on the nose, but certainly I think the alcohol is pretty well contained by the malt itself. Quite earthy as I aerate it, and like I said, it's kind of lightly oily, and it's just a really good Campbelltown. Let's see what the power's like. You can notice the alcohol on the palate. Lovely, soft, sweet barley. A bit of gritty oak, alcohol. That alcohol is emphasising the sort of the gritty tannins. Touch of malt, slightly fishy, little bit of peat. Just a background note of peat. Nothing too heavy. Lovely, chewy finish. It has to be said, and it is, like I said, a little bit more expensive obviously than the 12-year-old, and the amount of times you have to sort of say customers go, why is the 8-year-old more expensive, and then you have to point out its cask strength, etc, etc. But that's fantastic stuff. That is really very, very good. Let's put a little drop of water with it and see what that does. See if that opens it up a little bit more. Hopefully brings out a bit more of the oiliness. Yeah, it's a little bit more fruity now, less gritty. It's a lot softer and smoother. A little bit more on the sort of apricot. There's a little bit of a, almost kind of orange note kind of coming through. A little bit saltier now as well. Less malt, lighter, more fragrant. I mean, either way, I mean that is still pretty damn good. Rich, malty, juicy, still got that slight grittiness, a little bit of fishiness, still got that touch of peat. Just all round really, really good malt, it has to be said, and lovely length, and I think either with or without water it works perfectly well either way. A little bit of violets now kind of coming through just on the aftertaste, sort of like that kind of almost almost Bamori kind of Parma violet.
Look at her smiling how to walk, but I'm still creeping, little man.
Right, okay, so let's move on to the 9-year-old Local Barley. Let's see what the nose gives us on this end, shall we? Now it does feel a little bit older than 9 years old. It doesn't it has more maturity. Plenty of barley notes. It's got some dry, sort of slightly husky barley, a little bit of sweet barley. Again, quite malty, full. Touch of violets again, a little bit of vanilla. Not a huge amount of sherry character. There's maybe a little bit of dried fruit just in the background. Yeah, I mean that is a lovely nose. I'm questioning whether, I mean when you think about it, you know, the 18-year-old Springbank is not a lot more money than this, and it's, you know, just the pure economics of, well, it's double the age, you know, and it's I mean I know that the Local Barley probably costs a little bit more than buying sort of mainland barley from a commercial maltings company. It obviously takes a little bit more time and therefore more money for the entire production. I mean certainly Bruichladdich Isla barley bottlings are always more expensive than the Scotch barley versions, and but it has to be said, 90 odd quid. See what the power's like. Mouth filling, really salty, really fishy. Again, slightly violety, edgy, a little bit more tannins, a little bit more vanilla. But I don't think that really needs any water, to be bluntly honest with you. I think that's quite pleasant. The alcohol is certainly sort of emphasising again the tannins and a little bit of wood spice on the finish. It's classic Springbank. It tastes that little bit older. There's a sort of quite a noticeable oxidised fruit note that it has, which you would equate with maybe something more in its kind of teens, to be fair. So although it does actually say 9 on the label, it tastes, you know, a reasonable amount more, or should we say it tastes like it has reasonably more age to it than it actually does have. It's got brought out a little bit of citrus. The water's brought out a little bit of citrus, a little bit of lemon. Yeah, it's got maybe slightly more salt, maybe a little bit fresher. Still pleasantly barleyed. And possibly it's emphasised the peat a little bit more as well. But that is just what I love about Springbank is its natural feel, and I don't mean natural as in sort of like manure-y kind of natural, but it just has that sort of lovely natural character, and almost a touch of green fruit now as well, a bit of maybe sort of gooseberry, but not quite, maybe more green gauge possibly. Well, let's see what it tastes like now. A lot sweeter now actually. It does taste a little bit younger, not quite so old. So the barley's now got an almost kind of granulated sugar kind of coating, but the fishiness, the saltiness really quite balances that up. Still quite relatively tannic, grippy, gritty, malty, and again it seems to have emphasised the peat. The peat is a little bit more noticeable. I mean, it's not huge, but you can just kind of pick it up more than when you could when it was neat, and it's good. It's very good. 90 quid. I'll think about that while I'm carrying on.
This creepy little story. There's another girl called Anna. She's
right. Okay. So let's move on to the 12-year-old Cask Strength. So this was bottled at 56.2%. Let's see what it gives us on this. For a 12-year-old, the sherry component is actually not particularly heavy, to be honest with you. I mean, I'm guessing that maybe more refill sherry casks were used in this particular bottling. I mean, ordinarily it's a real sherry monster, but this is really quite subtle. It's got a really distinctive refill sherry kind of character, light sort of dried fruits and spices, which kind of allows the sort of the fishiness and the light peat and the barley to kind of come through. It kind of tastes, the aromas are sort of actually feel a little younger than the local barley. It's got more of a fresh kind of citric and salty edge to it, which is kind of what's making the nose feel younger than the local barley. And I'm not really picking up any sort of major oxidative kind of fruit character. But yeah, that's lovely. This has got to probably be one of my favourite 12-year-olds, it has to be said, but that's because it's not got huge gobs of sherry. Let's see what that was like. Right, more sherry on the palate, but again it's not overly dark and treacly and hugely olorosoed. It's more gentle. There's a slightly more nuttiness to the sherry. A slight herbal note obviously kind of coming through, some lovely spices, barley, touch of peat, touch of violets. Just really beautifully balanced, I think. I'm not going to bother putting any water with that because I really don't think it needed any, although it is 56%, and if I did, we'll probably be here all day by the time I get to the end anyway. But I love the intensity of it. It's got that lovely grippy sort of tannic intensity, but it's all kind of quite soft as well, and just really well balanced, and like I said, not too much sherry at all.
Creepy little things, too so feet. Oh, they became best friends.
Right, and talking of not too much sherry, in fact absolutely zero sherry, let's have a look at the 2018 18-year-old. Let's see what the nose gives us. Oh, that is lovely. Lovely, mature apricot, apple, honeysuckle, lightly gritty oak, slightly sawdusty oak as well, touch of violet, mature fish oils, but there's that lovely fresh edge to it, that sort of honeysuckle and citrus, that lime, lemon. Not getting a great deal of peat at all, it has to be said. Practically unpeated. There's a little earthiness, but that is just absolutely stunning, absolutely gorgeous. I mean, and this is just how good Springbank can be when you just stick it in an American oak cask and just let it get on with it. Yes, it's interesting with chunks of sherry, but this is how I love my Springbank. It just hits all the right buttons, shall we say. See what that's like. Kicks off with quite a bit of oak. I think there was some active casks used there, that sort of milky vanilla kind of character. Then you get a little bit of dusty American oak, then kind of comes through the mature apricot fruit, the barley, the salt, the fishiness, the slight violety notes, touch of wood spice, bit of earth, bit of grit. That's just so long and absolutely stunning, really good, and it's just got this lovely balance of freshness and maturity. That is just unbelievably good. Right, okay, so let's move on to the Kilkerran Heavily Peated. I know I'm looking forward to trying this, and it's not every day you get the opportunity to taste something before it is officially released, so that's always fun. Anyway, let's see what those are like. Well, there is an element of off the still notes. It's still got a rawness to it. But there's a lovely sweetness to the barley, and a real kind of fresh peat note. It's got a real edge to it, a sort of a real kind of youthful peaty intensity. There's a bit of earthiness, earthy peat, there's a bit of tar. I'm not getting any kind of medicinal peat notes. I'm getting some lime juice and a little bit of honey as well. I mean, it is really very, very tight. I mean, you know, this is 60-odd percent, 61%, and it's not ready yet. I mean, I think this needs probably, from that nose, I would say at least another 6 months. you just want to see if you can just get rid of that sort of slightly fainty-ish off the still kind of note. Just if you can just get shot of that, this is going to be absolutely stunning. And I hope the distiller. I'm pretty certain that the distillery is not going to release it until they're absolutely satisfied with it. So so I think that if it is released next year, which I'm pretty certain it's going to be, it'll probably be mid-year before it actually comes out, because it just needs about another 6 months, I think. I mean, just to get rid of that slight note, and you'll still have a really intense, youthful, peaty, but pleasantly fruity. Let's see what pass on. Again, it's got that slight faintiness off the still note, but it's got a beautiful sweetness to it, a rounded, sweet barley character, and then in comes that peat, and it is quite punchy, it has to be said. Dry, slightly tarry peat, touch of coffee, plenty of alcohol. I mean, it really does kind of mask the finish. I'm not getting an awful lot of length from it, so we'll put a little drop of water with it and see what that does to it. But the intensity is really impressive. So I'm guessing that by the time they actually bottle it, it will be somewhere around about 58ish. I would have thought, maybe. Even with water, it's still got that slight off the still note, but I'm getting a little bit of clementine, sort of satsuma, and again it's really brought out that lovely sweet barley character. There's still plenty of peat there. It's certainly not gone AWOL. It's earthy, it's edgy, it's young. That's going to age really nicely. I think that will be really intriguing to sort of see if the distillery keep releasing it year on year, so do a kind of peat in progress kind of thing until it gets to a 12-year-old, because then, and damn, I'm going to have to collect all of those as well, Anyway, it has a lovely nose. That really is quite special, I think. Anyway. Let's see what the pass like now. Still quite peaty, dry, earthy, slightly tarry peat, a little bit of tarred rope, richer, fuller now. Again, has a slightly sort of milky kind of vanilla-y oak kind of character. The fish oils as well. Nice dryness on the finish, but also a juiciness as well. It is just remarkably well balanced, and like I said, I think give that 6 months, and that is going to be sort of that's going to be ready at that point. I mean, I'm guessing. I mean, that's the thing with whiskey. You never really know at the end of the day until you actually sort of taste the samples, just to sort of see where it's actually at. But that's bloody good. Okay, and finally, let's have a big gob of sherry then, shall we? Let's see what the Longrow's like. Let's see what the nose gives us. Ah, yes. Lots of distinct herbal, nettly, oloroso, bit of almost kind of manure-y peat, treacle, tar, lots of dried raisinated fruit. I mean, that's not quite a car crash of a nose, but it's an intense nose. You know, it's big sherry, big peat, and you know what, I love it. I mean, you know, it's sort of one of those kind of, it's the guilty pleasure. It's the sort of the whiskey you know you really shouldn't like, but you actually do. You know, yeah. There's no distillery character, there's no barley, there's no anything else apart from big sherry, big peat. And it's pretty clean as well, it has to be said. I mean, I know a lot of you love the love dirty old Springbank. I'm afraid I'm not one of those. So you know, I want my Springbank to be as clean as a whistle, and certainly neat. This is definitely very, very clean. And like I said, yep, it's peat and sherry. Let's see what the palate's like. Really sherry, really grapey, really kind of fresh in actual fact. I mean, the saltiness kind of works in well with the sherry, and it stops it being too sweet. So yes, it's all oloroso, it's all dried fruits, it's raisins, it's sultanas, etc., etc. It's a bit of licorice, a bit of spice, a bit of tar, but the alcohol and the citrus kind of notes kind of, and the salt kind of all freshen it up and just kind of balance it up a bit. Yeah, it's quite drying on the finish, it's quite earthy, a lot of peat, a lot of dry peat, as you would expect. So I'm going to put a little drop of water with it and see what happens. Slightly medicinal aftertaste now. I'm getting a slight iodine-y sort of mentholy sort of note on the finish. On the aftertaste, I should say. Oh, touch of sulphur there. Yeah, a little bit of sulphur, a little bit of kind of green nuts. It's kind of sort of mingled up in that, and I know that sort of, I think some people might miss it because it's kind of wrapped up in that green nutty kind of sherry note, but there's certainly a slight sulphury note there now, once I've put a little bit of water with it, so that'll please you dirty old Springbank lovers. Yeah, let's see what the palate's like now. Yeah, again, that sulphur note is noticeable on the palate. Now, when I posted my notes on It's All About Springbank, somebody said I was being disingenuous by saying there was a bit of a sulphur note. How am I being disingenuous? I'm being completely and utterly honest. All I can say is what I find there. I'm not being disingenuous, and I'm certainly not being disrespectful to the distillery or anybody else. How can I be? That is just my personal opinion. Some people may well not pick up on the sulphur. Other people will pick up on it and go, yes, I love that. Me, not quite so keen. Neat, yep, no problem at all. A little drop of water, and that has indeed brought out that sulphur note. And like I said, all I can say is just tell you as it is. That's what I can taste. You know, I'm not asking you to love me for that, but you know, just respect that's my taste. I can taste it. You know. Anyway, I'm not going to get too particularly bent out of shape with regards to that. But either way, it's a sherry Longrow.
Here's the beginning of the end.
Right, okay, so let's sum today's episode of the show up. Like I said, I love Springbank. I'm a big Springbank fan, and but love is not blind, shall we say. You know, sometimes the things you love, you are probably slightly overcritical of at the end of the day. But the Kilkerran 8-year-old Cask Strength is absolutely gorgeous. I mean, I just love Kilkerran. I just think it's a gorgeous whiskey, and and I'm hoping that the distillery or the powers that be, shall we say, will keep the pricing structure the same because it's just remarkably good value for money. The 9-year-old Local Barley. All right, I'll nail my. Not nail myself to the mast, but I'll nail my colours to the mast. Yes, it's a good whiskey. No, it's not worth £92. If it was more around about the 70, possibly, I would say yes. I mean, I have sold it. Some people have bought it, funnily enough, and I do love it. But I don't think it's worth £90 odd. And again, that's my own personal opinion, and I'm hoping that there is not a slightly cynical edge coming in here with regards to the distillery's pricing policy, knowing that they've got the aficionados, they've got the Springbank lovers that will put their money or their hands in their pockets for it, and therefore, well, we're going to sort of fleece you. I hope that the Springbank pricing policy is not going to go down that route, because they certainly don't kind of come across like that at all. But I think that is indeed overpriced. The 12-year-old Cask Strength, possibly my favourite 12-year-old Cask Strength. I mean, lighter on the sherry, so kind of ticks all the boxes for me, shall we say. The Springbank 18, well, it's just. Now that is worth nearly £100. I mean, I have absolutely no issue at all with selling that Springbank 18. I mean, the 21, I mean, yeah, that's getting maybe a little bit too expensive. The last bottling, which I reviewed some months ago, was absolutely stunning. And the 18 is just frankly damn good. The Kilkerran Heavily Peated, yep. Again, another brilliant malt, really, really good. I honestly think, like I said, I think it needs about another 6 months in the cask, and hopefully the distillery will just sit on it for a little while longer before releasing it, because I think that just get that slightly off the still edge off, which I'm certain will happen in the next 6 months or so, and you can sell buckets of this. Everybody's going to want to buy this. Yeah. And finally, the Longrow 14. Again, well, I mean, I sold it all. I mean, you lot love your Longrows, it has to be said. And it is exactly as you would expect. It's peat and sherry at the end of the day. And although not my favourite expression, it has to be said, and certainly putting a little drop of water with it didn't do a huge amount of favours, it is what it is at the end of the day. So yeah, there you go. That's Boxing Day sorted. Although we're nowhere near it, as I keep saying. I'd just like to say another big thank you to everybody that watches the show, everybody that comments. I hope you'll carry on watching episodes of the show in the new year, and I can promise you the next episode of the show, which I'm pretty damn certain will be the first one that I do in 2019, is going to be an epic. Well, they all are, aren't they, at the end of the day? So anyway, all that's left to say is hope you have a great Christmas. I hope, well, I don't believe in bloody Santa Claus, but hopefully your other half will have bought you something decent. So anyway, until next year, good afternoon and good granny.
Gold still remains, she disappeared, but still grew up and became me. She was me. And they've been teaching me to talk, how to smile and how to walk, but I'm still creeping little me. Spoken words that has been said, spin around like a circus in my head. I'm still living in a dream, yeah. Spoken words that has been said, spin around like a circus in my head. I'm still living in a dream. Oh, I'm still creeping little me.